So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Ryan Sothin. He is an outreach coordinator with the Nebraska Attorney General's Office. Mr. Sothin has statewide responsibility for developing and implementing community-based initiatives for educating Nebraskans in the areas of consumer fraud, elder financial abuse, predatory and illegal business practices, identity theft, and internet safety. As a committed road warrior in fulfilling an average of 180 calendar engagements per year, his educational outreach services are extended to more than 20,000 Nebraskans annually. Mr. Sothin holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. And so we're very pleased to have you join us and glad to know you're a road warrior. So everyone, if in your office spaces, give it up for Ryan. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, Madhvi, for the invitation, and all of you across the state for tuning in to this final presentation. Honestly, candidly, I don't know if the joke's on you or if it's on me saving a notorious windbag such as myself for last, but Madhvi assures I concur that I will come in on time, come heck or high water. Now, speaking of jokes, I was always told that you should open a presentation with a joke. These don't seem to be especially funny times, but Julie, you're keeping things very, very positive, and I really appreciate the upbeat nature of the presentation. But if I were to make a joke, it would have to be something pertaining to social distancing, but unfortunately this is as close as I could get. That's a little bit of a wordplay there, so you have to think through that one. But on the topic of social distancing, I want to thank all of you who have been expressing concern for the Attorney General's office, as we have been besieged by protesters at the Capitol and around our office. And that's okay. We can hold our own very, very well, but we had one particular concern for one group especially, and that was the Nebraska chapter of the Flat Earth Society. Based on social distancing requirements, we were afraid that they might be pushed over the edge. So I am being told that I should stick to my day job, and I'm delighted because I love my day job. My day job is what brings me here, and I'm going to segue immediately into a scam and fraud update for the current year. So if you have sat through any of my other presentations over the decade that I've been in office, I always lead, and that's a funny looking slide, I've lost the blue. Never mind. But I begin with a familiar template and frame that conveys fraud complaints by age cohort. And you can see that if in your 20s up through your late 50s that you account for, by decade, approximately 15% of all fraud complaints. But something magically happens when we turn 60 and above, in that the actual fraud rate of complaints received doubles to effectively 2.5 times that of any other age cohort. And this is noteworthy because it's not in keeping with what we would expect based on age distribution in and around the state. That's what this next slide conveys. In the light blue is the actual breakdown by age cohort across our population. And you can see that individuals age 60 and above, though less than 20% of our population, account for 37% of all complaints. There's good news in this story in the fact that this rate has actually fallen 5% in the past year. That's largely attributable to the fact that identity theft, one of our top consumer complaints, the incident rate on identity theft has decreased and done so for 3 years running now. But this is still a significant factor because it's substantially higher than when I came into office, when that 37% was barely 27%. Still disproportional, but nowhere near the level of disproportionality that we are experiencing consistently over the past number of years. Now, I want to get into the common frauds and scams. Everything old is new again when it comes to fraud and scams within the state. Here is our dirty dozen for the year wrapping up in 2019. Imposter scams led the way, very closely followed by identity theft. And as I populate the rest of the screen here, I guess my transitions didn't quite work. Imposter scams and identity theft, each accounting for approximately 20%, are 40% of the overall frauds and scams reported to our office, and they're neck and neck this year. And I honestly don't make a strong distinction between the two, because experience has told me that imposter scams are the means, identity theft is the end, and that the two are very closely related. What I mean by imposter scams, I believe this audience is very savvy and well-heeled, in that it's someone assuming a role, and on the basis of that role, telling you a story that's either too good to be true or too bad to be believed, with urgency applied, in order to get you to take immediate action. And the immediate action that the scammers want is to separate you from your hard-earned income, savings, cash, retirement, brokerage account, wherever your store of value is. The most popular imposter scams, government officials, far and away. Right now, we're seeing an average of 15 calls per day into our mediation center of complaints from Nebraskans around the state indicating that they're receiving calls from officials pretending to be representatives of the U.S. government through the Social Security Administration, or worse, attached to law enforcement, saying that your Social Security number or the senior Social Security number has been attached to a crime through fraud and exploitation, that bad things have happened to good people, and that the senior is in a world of trouble and is going to have to pay their way out. These calls are being identified as coming from Texas, but they are spoofed telephone calls. If you're experiencing complaints at your senior center, your area agency on aging, your independent living or assisted living facility, know that you're not alone. You're welcome to call. You can call me directly. I always welcome direct contact. I'm at 402-471-3878, and I can help debunk these myths. But tech support scams have been especially virulent as well this past spring, largely because our senior population is very vulnerable. They know what it is that they don't know when it comes to computer technology. The scammers convince them that they have a virus on their computer, and they ask to take over to show the senior that the virus is present. What happens is that typically, once they convince the senior that a non-existent virus does exist on their computer, they then say, we're going to install the necessary antivirus, anti-malware, and they're literally taking a photocopy of the hard drive and all of the information contained therein to further exploit and financially abuse the senior. And then romance scams, I've had personal reports of a number of these from around the state. I think there are two sad things that happen in life: outliving your money and outliving your love. We have a number of seniors who are especially lonely and being encouraged by friends and by the Times to dip a toe into the online waters for finding a new relationship. And be careful. If the senior should find that when they paste up their profile that they get an immediate hit, and within days, if not weeks, of communicating with that paramour, that the paramour is professing undying love and affection and calling them answered prayer, what have you, and then gravitating towards a meeting in person, watch out, hold on to your wallet, because as that day approaches for the meeting, an excuse will be made and money will be requested. So please watch out for that. And then I'd say 3 calls a day are still coming in on the grandparent scam. I know all of you are very familiar with the grandparent scam, but this has never gone away. In times of COVID-19, I can clearly say that everything old is new again. We are seeing the same scams repeatedly, just higher in number and in reporting to our office. Now, identity fraud is what I take from the data, the overarching concern of the past year. It's 20% of all fraud complaints, as I indicated before, but it reached close to $17 billion in 2019. This is largely in keeping with the revenue total of years past, but it is in fact the highest level of theft since 2013. Ironically, though, the identity fraud incident rate is falling. It was once every 15 years on average per individual. Now it's about once a generation, back to once every 20 years, as the incident rate is 5.1%. But what's happening is that the scammers are impacting fewer people, but to a far greater dollar amount as they pursue all ends of theft from the senior. New accounts and other frauds are absolutely spiking. And by new accounts, what we're talking about is new account origination, applying for new credit cards to get that immediate cash flow. But it doesn't just stop with credit cards. Now we have loan and lease fraud to be concerned with, and think about it. Banking has moved online. And in doing so, you have non-brick and mortar facilities such as Ally, SoFi, a number of others that will willingly extend lines of credit on a non-secured or secured basis. And it doesn't just stop with those type of loans. It can be auto loans. It can be student loans. And this has experienced a sharp increase in the past year. But something that I want to bring to your attention, because there is a way to defend against this, we've seen a significant jump in what we call phone and utility fraud. By this, we're talking about the common utilities that we all have, from gas, water, heat, and electric, but especially cable, landline phone, and cellular phone, that we're seeing account takeover and new accounts being established fraudulently, especially in the area of cell phone accounts. And so later on in the presentation, I'll talk about how we can specifically look to address and limit the take rate from this form of identity theft. But to prevent this in the senior communities, we have a challenge before us, because the challenge is to change the existing behavior. And when it comes to the existing behavior, we need to move the seniors across the digital divide and into a higher level of technology adoption than they otherwise might be comfortable with, and as an extension of that, wanting to do. There's a fear factor here that it's too complex, it's over my head, I'm not capable. But there are a number of simple steps that can be taken, such as moving to cashless payments, which can be just exchanging an existing credit card for one that has the new tap and go capabilities, because the inherent advantages to that type of card. But to especially adopt a zero trust contact policy. We have too many seniors who are unpracticed and therefore vulnerable when it comes to questioning the authority and the authenticity of the caller who is making the claim, of the imposter who is reaching out to them. And a classic case in point, and I am a senior so I can convey this, Sunday night, 2 days ago, I had just come in from a week out on the road, and I was relaxing in my easy chair, and I heard my cell phone ding. And in dinging, I noticed that I had a text message, ostensibly from my primary bank, saying that an $800 and some odd transfer had failed to go through. And I found that unusual, so in clicking on the link, I looked at the file extension, and I could tell right away that it was a bogus extension. But just to be very sure, because I had used my Wells Fargo card during the week that I was out of the office, I first, through a separate device, a new browser, opened digitally my Wells Fargo banking account and checked my history. Then I took out my Wells Fargo debit card from my wallet, turned it over, called the 800 number on the back of the card, asked for the fraud department, and then had them verify to me. So I had checked, double-checked, even triple-checked, because of a zero trust policy of any of the information that might be alerting me to potential fraud. I needed to verify to my thorough satisfaction. That's what I'm meaning by a zero trust contact policy. But we also need to teach our seniors how to password protect everything from their banking accounts to any store of value when it comes to financial denomination or health information or other personal information. What we mean by a strong password, how to enact that, what we mean by two-factor authentication, which is becoming increasingly common, how they can secure their devices or their session in terms of accessing public Wi-Fi, to keep their operating systems updated, to install anti-malware, keep it updated as well, how to take out a security freeze, how to access a credit report, and then to sign up for account alerts everywhere that they are offered, so there can be proactive notification if there is suspicious activity in the senior's account. This is a tall order, I grant you that. But I feel that I've been successful right now in lobbying within the Attorney General's office that we are going to develop program material around this topic, again, to bridge the digital divide, bringing the senior along to stair-step them up a level of proficiency around what I will call the basics. I know that that can be frightening and intimidating, but the challenge that I will give the senior is that, hey, how many of you really understand how the internal combustion engine works? Very few of you. But you all drive because you value the utility, the freedom, and the power that driving gives you. Moving into this 21st century and accessing information using digital devices, which can include PCs, tablets, and cell phones, there is a utility, there is a value, there is a functionality. Be less concerned with the mechanics and more the value that you receive. And so we're going to focus very much on the value proposition of what it means to be safer and more secure in using these devices. We'll be developing that material as we speak. We are developing it as we speak, and I plan to be able to roll this out in pilot form by the beginning of fourth quarter of this year, so on or around October 1st. That's my promise to you. But it's important because as I was pulling this presentation together, the day I was pulling the presentation together, this article appeared in the Lincoln Journal-Star, closely followed by this article in the Wall Street Journal talking about how cash is no longer king, that we are moving to the cashless. Cashless is king. That Southwest Airlines, for example, if you've flown with them, you cannot buy a drink or a meal on plane with cash. You have to present a card. Now any updates, changes to your travel itinerary, all of that has to be done by card as well. So we are moving to a cashless, more digitally driven society. And a very easy measure, as I had mentioned before, is, hey, senior, if you'd like to be taking that rung up the ladder, let's begin with a very simple and basic step. Let's exchange your existing credit card for one that uses tap and go capabilities, because tap and go is inherently much more secure. The minute you tap, a token is authorized that takes the credit card, and none of those credit card numbers are passed in the transaction. It becomes the token, and it's a secure token between the terminal all the way to the bank and back. No PIN number is required, no signature is required, it's automatic, there's reporting, and there's built-in safety and security. And if they don't want to go contactless via a credit card, there are other forms of digital and mobile payments. I think we're all familiar with PayPal. We can bring the senior into accepting different forms of digital payments, much more secure, and outstanding fraud department at PayPal right here in Nebraska through their La Vista location as well. Another of the basics is to make sure that the seniors take out and enable security freezes across all three major credit bureaus. These are now free. They are enabled not only online but by phone, and can be done on the telephone in as little as, I'm going to say, 15 minutes, about 5 minutes per bureau. But I had promised information on stopping the new account origination and account takeover that is tied to phone and utility fraud. That's this last note. Considering a separate freeze with the National Consumer Telecommunications and Utilities Exchange, otherwise known as the NC2. This is available online or by mail, and what it entails is that when credit is extended to you for your utilities, and especially for your cable and your phone, that assessment of your credit worthiness is not made through the 3 major credit bureaus. It is now made through the NC2. You can take out a security freeze with them as well. This is what the National Consumer Telecom and Utilities Exchange webpage looks like specific to that security freeze. There is the toll-free number 1-866-349-5185 that you can call. Your security or credit report is known as a disclosure report. You can enable a freeze on it as well to better protect you from a very virulent form of financial theft and identity theft, and that is the account takeover of phone and utilities. All of this information, including the NC2, is available to you in our brand new Identity Theft Consumer Guide. This was just written during the course of January of this year, published in February, and we are in the process of distributing these materials now. Our preferred method during the time of COVID-19 is to distribute this as part of meal delivery, whether it's curbside or home delivery of meals. We have done this out in the Panhandle with the Aging Office of Western Nebraska, so a major shout out to Cheryl Bruns because I piggybacked on her hard efforts. We are endeavoring to do so with Meals on Wheels here in Lincoln and other Meals on Wheels locations across the state, and we've targeted the week of the 21st of September to begin the process of over 1,000 of these material-based kits with the Northeast Nebraska Area Agency on Aging come the 21st of September. Now, with Miracle Therapies and Cures, what I'm talking about here is one of the scams that I used to talk my way onto today's agenda. It was late breaking news at the time that Madhvi and I were talking in the January and February timeframe, but we have had rapid developments on this front. So I'm not going to go into great detail for reasons that will become plainly obvious, but I want to talk about the fact that there is a lot of excitement around the potential to offer all of us, but especially our seniors, to live longer and, more importantly, to live pain-free by leveraging the inherent potential of stem cells. Stem cells occur within the body. They also can be harvested from umbilical cords. They are marvelously adaptive cells. They are tied to the body's ability to heal itself. There is promise and potential, regulated, heavily regulated through the Food and Drug Administration. Most of the stem cell therapies that have been approved right now are in blood therapies, but there is promise and potential for other therapies as well, such as muscular therapy, brain therapy and healing, and what have you. But because the promise is so great, the scammers, the charlatans, the snake oil salesmen are coming out in droves, trying to convince lay people that they are the holders of true knowledge. Let's not believe the hype. As they come out, recognize that this is an area of heavy regulation, that the Food and Drug Administration has ample information on its website to educate us all as to what it is that we need to know, to stay in close consult with your primary care physician, and use, again, the Food and Drug Administration as a touchstone. But perhaps you've seen 4-color, beautiful, full-page ads in your local newspaper, such as these. These I've pulled from the Lincoln Journal-Star. I saw them in the Omaha World Herald. I know that they've been in newspapers across our state, but they're talking about everything from something that's bothered me, from plantar fasciitis, neuropathy, knee pain, what have you, and they're touting something known as regenerative therapy. And they are saying, come to our free seminar. We'll even buy you a meal at one of the upscale restaurants in your community. When they will put on a full court press because this is largely overpromise, under-delivery in the stem cell arena, and it largely does not work, not as advertised at least. And the cost to the senior can be an $895 initial consultation followed by an initial $12,000 to $15,000 first administration shot to subsequent shots at $3,000 to $5,000. The late breaking news here is that rather than making you aware, we had enough complaints coming to our office from bills totaling $800,000 to the Nebraska community to effectively sue. This is our announcement as published through a press release and picked up in the Journal Star on the 16th of July, announcing our action. There is the action itself, and right now the primary clinic providing regenerative therapy here in the state of Nebraska has been closed. More to come. However, we close one down, another will open. This is a lot like the game Whack-A-Mole. So I wanted to bring this to your attention because we talk so much between us about frauds and scams that tend to be telephone based. This is a fraud and scam that tends to be more medically based. This was initially brought to our attention through the Food and Drug Administration, through the Federal Department of Justice, and was covered in detail at the Fall Consumer Conference of the National Association of Attorneys General, which was held in Omaha this past year. But that conference came 48 hours after this was raised to my attention during a visit I had out to Mid-Plains Community College in McCook. And Beth Siegfried, if you're on the phone from the Heritage Senior Center, she made sure to get a note to me at Mid-Plains Community College to talk about this scam as it was being enacted, impacting multiple seniors in McCook. I want to thank you, Beth, for bringing that to my attention, and encourage all of you that if you see something or hear something, say something, and please bring it to our attention, because I'm very, very pleased from the early November timeframe that this was first brought and put on our radar to July 16th that we were able to take decisive action. As we're talking medical impact, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the coronavirus impact. Three things basically that we are seeing. One are complaints tied to online shopping. Obviously, the majority of us are now opting to make our purchases online rather than taking the risks, even with social distancing, to go out to our local stores. And in online shopping, the primary complaints are orders made and goods not received. Those orders tend to skew heavily towards PPE, or personal protection equipment, including face masks, sanitizer, toilet paper, the items that you can read there. Dominating the complaints COVID related to our mediation center have been travel and vacation related complaints, largely tied to the lack of refunds for travel, airfare, cruises, trips, conventions, what have you. I do want to make a personal note that the U.S. Department of Transportation does have a consumer protection complaint process. If you're finding that your airline is not cooperating with you at refunding your airfare, or a senior that you represent, you can contact the U.S. DOT through its own website, through its consumer protection site. And I think you'll be very, very pleased with the results that they're able to produce for you. Then we have Internet Information Services. This is basically exploiting the fact that more and more of us, since we can't be together in the office, are on our computers. We may not have those computers updated with the latest operating system, malware, or we may be tempted to click on links that are being provided to us by presumed coworkers, whatnot. but we find an awful lot of vulnerability in our computer systems today, and a very familiar scareware scam has come back. I've heard from a lot of seniors, unabashed and unembarrassed, about receiving a suspicious email of this type. This email is basically saying, you, kind sir or a gentlewoman, have negotiated to an adult content website, and unbeknownst to you, based on the image or video that you clicked on, we turned on your webcam and we caught you and the image. We have synced the two, and we have embarrassing information that we are going to blackmail you with, because we are now going to threaten to distribute this carefully synchronized video to all of the contacts in your Outlook file and across your social media accounts. This is a spam email. The accounts have not been breached whatsoever. It is put out by a botnet. But if you would like to avoid this scam, again, keep the operating system updated, the anti-malware, the anti-spyware, the antivirus. And the seniors don't know how to do that, so we will include information on how to better protect themselves in our coming basics of digital proficiency class that is forthcoming. Furthermore, tied to COVID, one of the great benefits is that credit reports now, instead of accessing one credit report a year from each of the 3 credit reporting agencies, you are allowed to look at your credit reports weekly for the next year through basically tax day of 2021. If the senior doesn't know how, we need to teach them how, because what we want them to do is to monitor the health and welfare of their credit reports by looking for inquiries, new inquiries in their credit report. All inquiries for new credit should be recognized to the senior as having been initiated by them. But if they recognize that there is activity that they are not familiar with, that is a potential red flag warning of identity theft. So the fact that credit reports are now free weekly for a year-long period is new and noteworthy. This is the only site where you and the senior can go to access the free credit report. It is annualcreditreport.com, and you can see the COVID-related message right across the top banner there, and you can click on the large rectangular red button to request your free credit report now, but it's only available at annualcreditreport.com, and if a senior can successfully navigate this page and the 2 or 3 pages that are behind it to pull up a PDF of their credit report, they are fully up the ladder of proficiency. And the only thing that I can think of to ladle on that would be more sophisticated would be to actually go to a website such as Walmart, Target, Amazon, and make an online purchase. But we will make sure that we can at least get the senior this far in our coming class. It's that important to their safety and protection. Lastly, and I didn't have a transition slide on eliminating robocalls, but that's what this is talking about. There is significant new legislation that was just signed into law on New Year's Eve of 2019. And it is the Telephone Robocall Abuse, Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence Act. That spells out conveniently the word traced, hence why it's called the Traced Act. And the ability to trace a call end to end is one of the significant breakthroughs attached to this new legislation. But what is significantly more valuable is that it is going to entail a new framework for call authentication, in that most of the calls that you are hearing about and that we are hearing about are spoofed telephone calls by the imposter pretending to be someone that they're not, as I indicated previously. Spoofing will become a thing of the past when Traced Act is fully implemented by July 1 of 2021. In that, as a call is made, a token is going to be applied authenticating that this is the maker of the call. And that token, regardless of whether it is a voice over internet protocol call, a cellular call, a landline call, will begin to be passed from switch to switch, network type to network type, device to device, continuing to authenticate that the person who shows up on your caller ID is the person who made the call. No longer will they be able to pretend that there's someone that they're not, and making a call over the internet from India, let's say, as an example, pretending to be the Social Security Administration when they're simply a scammer. So that is very significant, that call authentication framework. There are a number of other benefits as well that time won't permit me to go into great detail on, but I'm happy to talk to you about the many benefits. But you and your seniors may well be able to sample this technology now, because the major cell phone carriers are right now rolling it out ahead of schedule. For example, Verizon has had their version of Trace to Act implementation enabled since May of last year. It is known as Call Filter. If you're a Verizon user, contact Verizon about it. It should be automatically downloaded. If you're an Android user, you have to download a free app if you're an iPhone user. AT&T rolled theirs out at the end of July of last year. It is called Call Protect. If you're an AT&T user, ask about its implementation. And Sprint, just 2 weeks ago, through the newly merged Sprint and T-Mobile, which heretofore will only be called T-Mobile going forward, also has their brand new service rolled out and available for users to use to protect themselves and their safety going forward. With that, here's the contact information for our office. I've included my email address and telephone number, again, 402-471-3878. If you would like to talk more directly. I've actually come in under time. Something must be wrong with me. So I'm happy to entertain questions if there are any.
There is.
Well, it looks like we do have a question, Ryan.
Very good.
Eric?
So,
All right.
really long.
It is a little bit long, but okay. It says, Ryan, who should the senior or their family, if the victim has some cognitive issues, report his or her FUBAR to after it is learned that they have already given out all of their information and that some case/checks to a scammer in another state, possibly another country? Because I'm to say that local law enforcement did not appear to be very interested in this senior's situation once his wife learned he had given his name, address, phone number, social security number, mother's maiden name, and a copy of his driver's license, front and back, and email information to the scammer via Messenger on Facebook. The scam was that the man was in college with the victim, borrowed some money from the victim's dad but dropped out. He wanted to pay the money back. If the victim could just forward him some dollars to get his funds out of his home country, he would be able to pay back those funds and the funds he borrowed from his father all those 50 to 60 years ago. So it's like, it seems like what
Okay,
you're saying
I'll
is
do
it's-
my best to
Horse out of the
repeat for the
barn.
benefit of the 400
Thank you.
distributed across the state. I believe that the first point was, who should we report to if we have a vulnerable senior who has been exploited, in this case, possibly a senior with dementia, and the exploitation has been so thorough and complete regarding the amount of personal information that was stolen that it might have exceeded the capacity of local law enforcement, because local law enforcement in this example proved to be less than helpful. Is that a reasonable summation? Because it's typical, quite
That's what
frankly.
it's looking like. Yeah, they were giving out a lot of information. Basically, just all this stuff was given, and then it's just saying, basically, who should the senior or their family, if the victim has some cognitive issues, I guess is kind of what they're referring to. I mean,
The
that's-
cognitive issues become a challenge.
Right.
Because I would hope, well, I won't speculate. My father, I lost to dementia about 2 years ago, and I know what a great challenge that is. But you're pointing out the importance of this stair-step program that we are developing program information around. But a couple things. The first thing that should be done is once there is a confirmed loss of personal information, without hesitation to take out the security freeze. And I know the camera's over here. So the ability to check credit immediately to find out how extensive the damage is essential. So order up the credit report based on what you find without hesitation. Secure the credit accounts, and that is by enabling freezes across Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Then, if the police are not being cooperative with the taking of the report, we can come up with a de facto equivalent of a police report by working with the senior or the senior's son or daughter or other family member to go to identitytheft.gov to complete an identity theft affidavit. This is the de facto equivalent of a police report. It's needed and necessary because, as we're going to learn from the credit report or the specifics in the case that you gave me, that there has been fraud in the senior's name that is not of the senior's doing. Once it's identified as fraud, verified through the police report, we can then begin the process. You can begin the process on your own or with our help through a mediated case of contacting each of the 3 credit bureaus and then identifying the fraud and asking that it be removed. Now, in cases where the family is aware that the senior is currently vulnerable and talking to someone, let's say a romance scam, and says, hey, they are believing that their paramour is in China and has a delay and that there's $10,000 that they're asking for, and I believe my dear mother sent $10,000 today. If you can notify our office immediately, we can leverage our contacts within that short a time period to potentially shut off the loss, even by gift card. But after 24 hours, we tend to lose our efficacy immediately because it is typically like lighting cash on fire. But digital payments, another story, within the first 24 hours, we can leverage, again, our capabilities. Now, beyond that, the situation presented is much more complex necessarily than the answer, but I do just want to review the basics, is that once you know there's a vulnerability, check the credit report, freeze the credit report, report the exploitation either to police directly, but if they're not being cooperative, through an identity theft affidavit found at identitytheft.gov, then begin the process of contacting each of the 3 credit reporting bureaus to have the fraud removed and not dinging the senior's credit report. Also, don't forget to take out a similar freeze through the NCTUE, the National Consumer Telecom Utilities Exchange. That's an important area as well. I've seen so much phone and utility fraud of late that I really would like to lead with that freeze because I think that will do a heap of good in a short amount of time to protect seniors and ourselves, quite frankly. If you haven't done it, I highly recommend that you take one out on your own accounts. Anything else? I still have a minute.
Well, I did get the.
I can tell more jokes.
I guess personally, I got that same text that
Did you?
got. I don't bank with Wells Fargo at all, but it said Wells Fargo $853, and then the $sign was behind the amount. So right away.
That is the exact text. So here in the room, I'm being told that the scam that I had been exposed to on Sunday regarding the denied transfer of funds obviously was the type of spam text that has gone out and impacted others. But again, I want everyone to have a zero trust contact policy and take the necessary steps to absolutely verify that the message that you're receiving is legitimate, or in this case, illegitimate. And that's not easy for a senior to do. They need their hands held. We're willing to do that. But right now, our approach, as you can expect from an outreach coordinator, will be continued education. But this is programming that I'm offering to senior centers, to area agencies on aging, to congregate living facilities, to chambers of commerce. Contact our office, contact me directly beginning in the fourth quarter of this year and ask for that programming. We will bring it to you free of charge to better serve and protect Nebraska seniors. With that, I want to thank Madhvi for the opportunity again to be with you all today in this format, Julie for being the most gracious of hosts, and all of you for allowing me to come in on time for quite possibly the first time ever in my life. So, thank you.
Oh, this was wonderful. And I know that the 400 plus people are just applauding. They are.
And he did it, he did it.
Wasn't, okay, was that not an outstanding presentation? And what a wonderful, although I have to tell you, frightening way to end our day in terms of identity theft and everything, but regardless of age, how important it is to know all the things that you shared with us. So Ryan, thank you. This has been just a tremendous day, and you might say, well, of course it's been, because you all worked on this, but the reason why it's been such an outstanding day is because you provided us, through your evaluations from the previous year, of topics that you wanted covered for this year's training. And so in order to make next year's training even better than this year, although I don't know that that's possible, we need you to complete the evaluation form. And you will find that evaluation form on the DHHS website. So please, please complete that evaluation form. And then also, I believe you received an email earlier today from Madhvi in terms of the post-assessment. So for those of you receiving CEUs and I think CLEs, you will need, or CEUs, just the CEUs only, you need to complete a wonderful examination of your knowledge. And we know that you will all do a great job. And so get those completed. Know of our gratitude. Only those that are streaming will need to complete that. So thank you, Madhvi. Thank you, everyone, for participating in this training. And we wish you all a wonderful day. Stay safe. Complete your security freezes and have a good evening. Thanks.
Thank you.